It's sort of a mental attitude about critical thinking and curiosity. It's about a mindset of looking at the world in a playful and curious and creative way. Adam Savage. It's time for science, and it's time to talk with a very special guest about student engagement. Maynard Okereke, better known as the Hip Hop M.D., graduated from the University of Washington with a degree in civil engineering. He's an award-winning science communicator, having received both the Asteroid Award for Best Streaming Content and the People of Change Award for his community outreach efforts. His passion for science and entertainment, along with his curiosity for new innovation, has taken him through an incredible life journey. I talk with Maynard about the importance of staying curious, keeping our students and ourselves engaged, why you don't need to be an expert to teach science, why representation matters for everyone, and the most surprising thing he's learned while researching one of his great content videos. It's time for science, and it's time to talk about student engagement. And if there is anyone out there more engaging about science education than my guest today, I have yet to find them. Maynard Okereke, better known to the world as the Hip Hop M.D., is an award-winning science communicator, motivational speaker, and STEM evangelist. He has a very diverse background in science, civil engineering, acting, music, and more importantly, a deep love of learning and exploration of the natural world. He created Hip Hop Science because he saw a lack of minority involvement in the STEM fields and is all over social media, encouraging minorities and youth in general to pursue advanced career paths in science. His daily posts on Instagram and Facebook are uplifting and informative, and his passion for combining his diverse interests to inspire kids and adults is truly something to see. I've been following him for some time now, and I'm so thrilled that he has found time in his crazy busy life to talk about student engagement. So Maynard, welcome to It's Time for Science.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I was doing research on you, and you must be living in some sort of a world where you have 48 hours in your day, because I don't know how you do all the things you do. You've flown in a weightless plane. You spent a month at sea studying hydrothermal vents. You travel all over your STEM conferences. You do keynote addresses. You check out new tech. You meet the next generation of brilliant kids. You build terrariums. You go on hikes. And you've taught me more about spines, thorns, and prickles than I ever thought that I would ever know in my entire life. So, and you have a 1-year-old daughter. So I don't know how you're doing all this. It's amazing. So
yeah, it's a lot of work, but I always say it's nothing seems like work when you're having fun doing it. And I truly love this. I'm truly passionate about this work. And so for me, it's just exciting. And I'm curious and I love learning. And so every single day it's a new adventure. There's something new in some area of STEM. And I'm always curious to seek it and find it and learn more about it. And so for me, it's invigorating. It gives me energy and fuel.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think they always say do something you're passionate about, but the reason you do that is because it's a lot of work, and the passion keeps you going. That's the hardest part, really. As I've hosted this show, I've really come to understand how science can and should be one of the most exciting classes for kids. It really encompasses all of the other subjects: writing, reading, math, social studies, history, art, the general concept of discovery and learning by doing. So I wanted to talk to you about student engagement. In an interview, you talked about being the kid who was always asking questions and being engaged. Why do you think that's important in general? Why is student engagement important?
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, that's exactly who I was. I was that curious kid in class that always had his hand up, asking questions and wanting to know more. And I think, and I have a big saying, and you probably know this on my platform, then I say it a lot in my videos: curiosity is nature's PhD. And that's a phrase that I coined because for me, curiosity has opened the doors for so many amazing things I've been able to do in my career. I've been able to do a lot of things that I don't have expertise in. You know, my background's in civil environmental engineering, but obviously I do a lot of biology, wildlife explorations, a lot of space education, about space exploration, tech, and everything in between, right? Because all of these subjects fascinate me, and there's so many different things I want to learn about them. And I've been able to do so many advanced things within all of these different fields because I've been curious, because I've asked questions. Being able to engage with experts, being able to work with educators that have expertise in these fields, that curiosity and me asking questions is what has opened the doors for so many things that I've been able to do with my platform. And so I always say curiosity is a key. especially for our young students. And curiosity is a thing that's innate in all of us. We're all naturally born curious, right? Kids are innately curious. We all know this. If you've ever had a kid and raised a little one, asking questions, trying new things, putting things in your mouth, right? Like those are all the basics of wanting to know more about the world around us.
Right.
And what happens is, unfortunately, as we get older, that curiosity gets sucked out of us, right? We get jaded by life and life experiences. We
Mm.
meet people that question our ability to be able to do things. We get told that we're not capable of doing things. We're made to believe that things are too difficult to do. And what ends up happening is that, especially at kids at a younger age, they check out, right? If they don't feel they're capable of doing it, if they don't have people that look like them doing these things, they check out and they feel inferior and they feel less than. And so they stop asking questions. They stop being inquisitive. And then as they get older, that just continues to seep within them. And even as adults, right, we have to continue that curiosity, continue to engage and continue to ask questions. But especially for our youth, it's so important because they're at a pivotal age where they're absorbing everything and they're now being intrigued by the world around them. And they're now being exposed to all these amazing career paths and these different places that they can go. And if that curiosity is sucked out of them, then they don't want to engage. They don't want to explore. They don't want to seek out. They don't want to question things. And then we stop being innovative. We stop being able to have these amazing advancements that we're able to have in society. And so engagement, to me, with curiosity goes hand in hand, because that curiosity, asking questions and being inquisitive, is how you engage with the world around you. It's how you engage with other people. Ultimately, that's how you learn more. And that's how you get inspired and motivated to do great things in this world. And we need that curiosity, especially for our youth. We need to instill that curiosity, and we need to continue to pour into that curiosity. Let them know that it's okay to ask questions, because that ultimately is the ultimate engagement that we need, that's going to elevate them to the next level.
That's awesome. I want to come back definitely to the representation part of that equation, but I know for a lot of kids, what's great about science is that it's that whole hands-on sort of like asking questions, because so many other subjects are like, here are the facts, learn the facts. This is what the thing is. And where science, it's like, ask all the questions. And I love that about it. It's sort of like, I love your curiosity about it. And that's, I think, is incredibly inspiring too. So I was wondering if you have any tips or suggestion for teachers. A lot of our listeners are K-8 teachers who might not have a specific background in science, and science can be a little intimidating to them. So I think that overall, I think your approach of just showing your enthusiasm is probably one of the biggest keys. But do you have any suggestions for teachers to keep the kids excited about this kind of a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to give a big shout out first and foremost to educators and teachers, because without educators and teachers, we have nothing, right? And unfortunately, we all know our teachers are underpaid, undervalued, and they deserve so much more. But especially in this time, especially post pandemic time, when so many people were forced to become teachers, parents were forced to become teachers, we started to realize how difficult of a job teaching is
Yes.
and how difficult
Yeah.
of a job education is. And especially when you talk to underserved students and schools that don't have as many resources as others, and teachers are buying books and buying materials on their own expense, so many different things. You have all these elements that are contributing to the difficulties that educators have, because the ultimate job is to pour into their students, and yet they have to pour into so many other things, so many other ancillary things around them, that in order to be able to support the students. And so I want to acknowledge that first and foremost. There's a lot of difficulties that educators have, and we need to respect that, and we need to do a better job at addressing those difficulties as well. But with saying that, there's so many amazing ways to be able to pour into students and engage. And you brought up a great point, like not even having the science background, not having the expertise. Just like I mentioned earlier, right? Curiosity is nature's PhD. I don't have an expertise in a lot of these topics that I discuss and that I address and I make content on. But I ask questions, I engage, and I work with experts. And ultimately, curiosity is the key to learning more. And so the important tool that you have to remember as educators, you have to be able to just open that door of inquisitiveness and open that door for curiosity for students, without even necessarily have to be an expert in these fields. It's not necessarily your responsibility to give them all the information that they need to be able to now absorb. It's really your responsibility to open the doors and let them ask questions. There's a lot of inquiry based learning that's happening right now, where the whole goal is to be able to now pour into these students, let them engage, let them, discover what it is that they want to learn, let them ask the questions and let their curiosity now navigate them to new areas and new heights and be able to now pour into that. And so I think that's always a key to remember as an educator is like, how do we now open these doors for new learning opportunities for our students? How do we expose them to new things? Hands-on learning for me is absolutely big. Any opportunity that we have to be able to get our kids engaged physically, whether it's with tools, whether it's with coding, whether it's going out in nature and exploring and touching and being immersed in wildlife, whether it's now bringing AI opportunities into the classroom, robotics, all these different things. There are amazing tools out there that now are that curiosity starter, because now they can actually physically engage with these tools. They can get hands-on. They can ask questions. Why does this move this way? Why, when I put these numbers in, does this happen? Why, when I'm out in nature and I see, brought up thorns and prickles, and I was like, how does this work? Why do plants have these defense mechanisms? What's the purpose? How does evolution work in plant species? Now you start opening the doors for all these interesting questions and this interesting dialogue that can now transform them into so many new horizons. And I think that's the key, is to be able to be that vessel for new opportunities and new engagement, to be able to learn. And so, obviously with that comes, opportunities for funding and everything, which is a lot of, discussion that, I don't know if we'll get into. That's a lot, but, being able to provide those resources and, the simple things that you have. I remember during the pandemic, I had a whole kind of backyard science series that I started doing, because, we're trying to find ways to be able to still be immersed in the environment without actually being able to be around people and different things. And I started showcasing all these amazing things that you can discover in your own backyard: new species, soil, water, learning about the environment and nature, how certain things behave. And you can do a lot of things within your classrooms, being able to bring things into your class where you can now be able to ask questions, give assignments for the students to be able to go home and now let their inquisitiveness take them on a new journey, discover things on their own, bring that back to the classroom, and then engage and ask questions and work with, collaborate with other students. There's so many amazing things like that I think are great for educators to focus on and pour into your students, that will now open those doors for curiosity and further engagement.
That's come up a number of times on the podcast, is literally just simply go outside. Go to whether you're in a city or the country, there's just something going on right outside your door. And I do think it's nice that I grew up in sort of more of an old school thing where the teachers, they knew everything. But I think the approach of I don't know everything is better. Let's figure this out together. I mean, if you're a teacher who knows nothing about science, do exactly what you just said. Let's find out together, guys. I think kids love that.
Something that simple is so amazing, because at the end of the day, kids are way more smart. That's way much smarter than we give them credit for. And I always say I've done a lot of sessions for educators, and one of the points I always articulate to educators is this kind of nomenclature is like real recognize real, right? Kids can see when you're being fake or you're not being authentic, and it's okay to not know. And I think we're in a society now where we feel like we have to know everything, or that we have to be able to stand on this mountain of like knowledge. And kids at an early age, sometimes different exposure, different backgrounds, different cultures. People come from so many different places. Not everything is common knowledge. Not everything is common sense. And I think kids really respect that when you are able to say, I don't know. I just don't know, right? Because now it makes them feel worthy, because like, oh, I don't know this either. And my teacher that's teaching me and pouring all this knowledge into me, they don't know these things either. But I can ask questions and I can engage and I can go out and explore and be able to learn more. And so I think we need to be okay with not knowing and pour that into our students and let them know that it's okay to not know. The next level now is, what questions are you going to ask in order to know? What questions are you going to ask in order to be able to now find that knowledge? Who are you going to talk to? What research are you going to do? How are you going to further engage to be able to acquire that knowledge? And I think that's the important part, not necessarily already having that fundamental basis of knowing.
I think also, without going too far down that road, one of the things that I love about science is I think people have an inability to admit when they're wrong, or their inability to find new information. I think science does that very well. Sort of like, here's my hypothesis. Oh, didn't work. I have to change it. Let's figure something else out. And that's a great skill, just a skill to have in life, because I run into people all the time who just won't change their opinion even though they've been proven wrong. It'd be nice if new information has come. Let's learn some new information. So.
Yeah. And a lot of that leads to, we talk about misinformation in science and everything, because what happens is that the public starts to disbelieve things in science because things change or people's
Right.
positions change. And we saw a lot of that during the pandemic with,
Hmm.
you know, for learning more things about the virus and, oh, it works like this, so now we have to do that. And no, this is changing, so now we have to do that. And then people are like, well, why is everything changing? Well, that's how things work. You know,
Right.
if we stuck with what we knew 100 years ago, we'd still be doing surgeries with dirty hands. You know, like there things change, and science is so lovable to me because it epitomizes everything about that. Right? We learn
Right.
more, we find out more, and we change our perspective. And
Right.
we and sometimes it happens over centuries, sometimes it happens over a period of months, sometimes it happens over a period of years. Depending on when we are able to acquire that knowledge and learn more, that's when we change and we now readdress, we rewrite the books, and we go back to a fresh start. And to me,
Right.
that's the exciting part because there's always something new. And I think we as people in general, but especially as educators as well too, understanding like, hey, it's okay to not know, and it's okay for things to not work. Experiments, the best experiments that you can do in the classrooms are the ones that fail, because now you can ask these questions and be like, why didn't this work? What could you do differently? How can we now morph this into something else? So now the students can now be able to take that to another level. If everything just works right off the bat, cool, that's fun. But then it's kind of the questions might just stop there. It worked, okay, cool.
Right.
But when something doesn't work, now that's when you're able to get innovative. That's when you're able to try new things and really see that curiosity in full force.
I always tell people when I grew up in the 70s, there were like 4 dinosaurs and 3 of them weren't real. I mean, everything's changed since then. It's like, Brontosaurus? What do you mean it's not real? I was
Yeah.
very disappointed when the Brontosaurus was not real. So
Right, exactly, exactly.
I want to get back into the representation thing. Now, I personally come from a background of comics and graphic novels and publishing, things like that. And in the last decade, especially, I've really come to respect the power of the phrase representation matters. Now,
Mm,
I'm a middle aged white guy. It's not the kind of thing I
mhm,
thought about growing up much. And then all of a
mhm,
sudden, it really just sort of hit me. It's like how important that is. I saw myself everywhere
mhm.
and other people didn't. And I suddenly realized, wow, that's a huge thing. So you talk about this a lot. You had a recent video really great about the 2 African American girls who solved the Pythagorean theorem using trigonometry. Like
Yeah.
2,000 years, this hasn't been able to be done, and they did it.
Mhm,
And there's an aspect of it that's just great math, good for them as students, but also as African Americans, also as African American women. And
yeah.
so, why to you specifically? Because you're obviously incredibly unique to talk about this. Why is representation so important, and how do we get kids who don't see themselves in these sciences? You talked a little bit about that. There, you were in engineering, not seeing yourself really. I mean, where
Mhm.
were the African American people in engineering and all that kind of thing? Why is
Yeah.
this so important to you?
Yeah, and that's a big topic, and I think it's really important for all communities to recognize this because representation comes in so many forms and shapes, right? Obviously, when I talk about representation, it's me as a black man, as a black person having my black experiences, but representation matters in so many levels, right? It could be representation when it comes to your disability, it could be representation when it comes to your gender, right? We've talked about the women and disproportional representation of women, particularly within the STEM fields, especially in fields like engineering. And so representation matters because it's important for you to be able to see what's possible, right? Seeing is believing. And I always say representation is key because we believe what we see. If you grow up and you don't see people that look like you, that have similar experiences, that are going through similar trials and tribulations in your life that you have, you ultimately don't believe that it's possible. And it ties in with that curiosity element that we talked about, of being drained, being jaded by life experiences, because we see things and we're told things, and we start to believe those things that we're told. If we are constantly being fueled into us and poured into us that we're not capable, or that people like you don't do this, or that this is not where you're meant to be, then you start to believe that. And then you push yourself out of these fields, and then you don't open these new doors for opportunities for yourself and for your community. I talk about this a lot in my journey going into education. You know, my original goal before studying engineering, I wanted to be a wildlife biologist. That was my original major when I went into college. And I was told by peers and other educators, like, nah, you don't want to do wildlife biology. There's no opportunities in that field. You won't be able to find money in that field. Don't do it. And so I was dissuaded by it. And it took me years and years, but I realized later that a lot of that discouragement I received wasn't really about money. It was really because there was no representative figure who looked like me. someone whose, path could be emulated, someone they can point to and be like, oh, this person looks like you and they're in this field, that there's a path for you to go there. Nobody sees that, nobody visualizes it. And so if you don't visualize something, if you don't see a path that's capable, you're going to doubt it and you're going to question it. And then when you see somebody else trying to do that, you're going to feel like, oh, it's not possible for you to be able to do that, because there's no representative figure that's done that you can now point to and copy that same trajectory. And so it's important for especially our youth to see representative figures, people that look like them, so they know what's possible. Because now, everything about mentorship is key, because when you have a mentor, right, those mentors guide you. They show you a path. They talk about what they've done in their own careers to be able to get to where they're at. And when you have representative figures, they showcase that as well too. You can now follow their journeys. You can see what they did to get to where they're at, and you can be like, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to follow that path in order to get to this level of success. And if you don't have those representative figures, if you don't have that representation around you, then you start to doubt your own beliefs. You start to doubt your own abilities, and you start to limit yourself. And so representation for me is key, especially when we talk about Black and brown voices and students. And we know that there's a disproportional representation of Black and brown students, particularly within the STEM fields. And that representation is important. When I talk to students and they see me, they see a Black man, running around doing crazy science videos, exploring the world, they're like, wow, I've never seen somebody that looks like you doing this. And now I feel inspired. Now I feel motivated that it's possible for me to be able to do it. And now, and to me, that's always the most rewarding part, when I see that light just flicker in the student's eye and they get excited and they're like, wow, I've never had somebody in front of me that actually was capable of doing that. Wow, I see an astronaut in the middle, and I've seen this happen to students when my astronaut friends, when they see them, they're like, wow, I've never met an astronaut before. Particularly, I've never met a Black astronaut before. Now I feel inspired. Now I feel uplifted, and now I can set a goal for myself in life to go after that. And so for me, that's why representation is so important, because it's the belief, it's the visualization, it's speaking something into existence, and we need to pour that into our youth. For whether your gender background, whether your ability background, whether your color of your skin, whatever representation that you need to feel inspired, to feel motivated that you can do something great, we need those for our youth especially.
I think the first time I really thought about this was years ago when Nichelle Nichols of Star Trek was interviewed, and she talked about thinking about leaving the show, and Dr. Martin Luther King told her not to because she proved that they were there in a position of power. And I was like, oh my God, I never thought of that. And how powerful that kind of thing is, and how she inspired astronauts and people after her simply because she was on a TV show. And I think that's amazing stuff. I think it's so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the crazy part is, because and the thing is, like, sometimes we think about, when you talk about these topics of diversity and representation, sometimes they seem so heavy, and they seem so like they carry so much weight, right? Because of our society and, racism and all these things. But if you just really just break it down to a simple nutshell, I mean, you could say the same thing about any great thing that anybody wants to aspire to be, right? We think about, like, your favorite artist, your favorite musician, your favorite actor, right? And for somebody that's an aspiring actor, aspiring musician, you have somebody that you look up to, someone that you've either followed their work, you've listened to their music, you've watched their movies, and you're like, that's greatness. I want to be like that person, right? That for you is a representation. That for you is someone that you can emulate, someone that you can aspire to be like, right? And so when we talk about representation, it's really simply that. It's just having those figures, and it brings another level of importance and another level of dialogue and weight to it and gravity to it, when it's also someone that comes from your cultural background, someone that comes from your gender background, someone that you're able to connect with on a deeper level. And so I always like to bring that kind of holistically back to a more, like, simple level where we can understand why representation is so key. It's really just having someone that you can connect with, someone that you can relate to, that's gone through similar shared experiences, that you can now emulate their journey as well.
Yes, it's amazing. I mean, that's for me, that's my favorite part of your work, is just you're such a positive image for all kids, for all, just any kid, but especially for minorities who are going to look up and say, oh my God, I can do that. Especially in the sciences. I think in general, the sciences are always pushed to the side as a nerd. I saw an interview with you. You talked about, you were an athlete and you did this and you're an actor and you're a funny kid in class and you were into science. I have a similar sort of background. It was sort of like I was athletic nerd. It was confusing to
Yeah.
people. So, but it's great. I think they can look at you and say, look at this guy doing all this stuff. And I think that's amazing. I think teachers do the same thing, that sort of emulate, they can learn to inspire kids by just being themselves and dealing with their passions. I think that's really, really exciting.
Yes, 100%.
We're sponsored by FOSS, which is the full option science system, and it's a hands-on curriculum. And one of my things, I love you do these, and these are almost like a side thing for you, which is fun because you bring your personality into it, but you're building a terrarium with a waterfall. And I thought to myself, that's a great project for a class. If they don't know what to do, you've made it very simple. It's like, oh, I just took a class, I did this, and they followed the journey. So I'm thinking like things like that would be great things for kids to do, like hands-on. I mean, your experience with terrariums, why are you so fascinated by that, and what do you get out of that?
Yeah, that's it. It's funny because that's I've always had, ever since I was a little kid, I always had this weird fascination with just ecosystems and environments. I just love being out in nature, even if I didn't see a single bit of wildlife. Like just being around in nature, just being by a stream, a river system, like there was just this peace, like this level of serenity and peace that I always got from it. And terrariums were always a thing that I was just always fascinated by. And being able to now have basically a little ecosystem in a box for me was just incredible. And especially now doing this work, there's so many amazing learning opportunities actually you get from building a terrarium. You get to understand how an ecosystem, how an environment works, how especially a closed environment. You can bring up topics about respirations and plants respirating. That's exactly how terrariums are able to sustain themselves because they recycle that water that these plants respirate, and that water ends up going back in the soil and refueling the plants. You're able to talk about different organisms and decomposers, things like pill bugs, things like slugs and snails, and how they work and how those are pivotal to a functioning ecosystem. Fungi and bacteria, how they grow and how to be able to limit their growth in certain areas and why they grow in different environments and what they're able to provide for different ecosystems. Like the learning opportunities just go on and on and on. And for me, it's really cool just to be able to, one, it's an artistic thing for me to be able to now put together an environment. I see something in nature, I go on a nature walk and I see a cool, waterfall, that I can now construct that into a small little environment on a mini scale. And there's a really awesome artistic element and creative element that I really enjoy being able to just kind of get hands on. It's like painting for me, just like someone else would like to color, it's like painting and coloring for me to be able to now design and put together an ecosystem. But at the same time, being able to learn.
And also the engineering, you had to build the engineering of the waterfall and everything. It's some kids are going to like totally get into that aspect. Yeah.
The engineering aspect of it. Yeah. I construct the waterfall, know how to pump water. Yeah, 100%. So I love it. I got the big terrarium inside the house. I got a little one here in the garage, and I always just love building them. For me, it's just a fun little side hobby.
I was going to wrap up with saying I'm the father of two kids myself, and I think when you have kids, it sort of like really drives all this stuff home. You want to teach them everything, and you were talking a little bit about that. And your daughter is one, and she is easily the third cutest kid I have ever seen. But has fatherhood inspired you or changed your outlook on the future, or has it just made it even more so?
Yeah, no, it's 100% changing my outlook for sure. I always loved kids. I always loved pouring into kids and working with kids because I said I think youth are our future, and it's so important to spark that curiosity. But especially after having my daughter, and especially I think having a daughter as well, it just really opened the doors for me of the level of importance of why this is special. I'm big on, like I said, curiosity, but I'm also big on affirmations and letting them know that, hey, you can do this, and pouring onto them and instilling that belief. And so I pour in words of affirmation to my daughter every day, letting her know that she's beautiful, that she's capable of doing this, because especially as women, you're going to be told so many different things, right? And so being able to instill that confidence is so important. But now knowing just like working with other students and knowing the limitations and lack of resources and all these different things that affect our students, now having my daughter and know that she ultimately will be in a position where she can make an impact on certain things. Her voice is going to be heard. She can contribute to amazing things in society. I feel so much more motivated and inspired to continue doing this work because I know that she's up next and she's going to have me as a figure to look up to. and to emulate and be inspired by. And I want to do everything that I possibly can to show her all these amazing things that the world can do for her, and so many places that she can go in this world. And so it's definitely upped my level of passion and desire for this work that I do, because I want her to be successful, and I want her to be able to go out and do anything, absolutely anything that she wants, whether she wants to be a doctor, lawyer, a marketing agent, wherever she wants to go in life. I want to let her know that the possibilities are open to her, and as long as she's curious and asks the right questions, she can go anywhere she wants to go.
Yeah, I remember that when my first baby came along, I said, the only thing I want is good health and a curiosity about the world. That's it.
Yeah.
Anything else, they'll figure out their path. But if they're curious about the world and want to learn, that's everything, really.
Yes, yes.
And it's
That's all you can ask for. That's all you can ask for.
Yeah, it should be. And I always understand people. My son's going to be a linebacker. Really? What if he's a ballet dancer? What do you?
Yeah,
just
right.
Let him do whatever he's going to do, man. It's okay.
Yeah. And that ties into all these things we talked about earlier: curiosity and representing all these things. It's like, I know, as I get it as parents, right? We always have expectations for our kids, because we have something that we're passionate about and that we love doing. We want to share that with our students, with our kids, and of course I want to share that too. I love sports, I love science, obviously. Like, I want her to love science ultimately, and I could expose her to these things, but ultimately she's going to choose the path that's that she wants to do. The best thing that I can do as a father is expose her to all these amazing things that are out there and let her guide herself to where she ultimately wants to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just go to the museums, go to the art museums, go to the science museums, and just live life. Go in your backyard. You know more about your backyard than anybody I know. So
yeah.
And it's also nice because the world can be a pretty dark place, and you see a lot of the youth that's like very positive. So you can see, hey, some of these kids are amazing. They're learning robotics, they're learning about AI, they're coding, they're learning all these wonderful things. So that must be a very nice thing, because sometimes you get mired down in the world is a terrible place, and so it's nice to see. It's nice to see the good stuff. So I wanted to close with, I wanted to know if you had a science tidbit you learned in one of your research things doing a video that really surprised you. What was a piece of science that you learned that was like, whoa, that's awesome?
Ooh, that's a good question. Ooh,
because you do a lot of research. I see stuff, and it's like you said, you talk to people about stuff you don't really know. So there must be something that came along. It's like, wow, what is that?
Yeah. Man, that's a really great question. I'm trying to think, because there's so many things that fascinate me that I'm always intrigued to know. I'm big in tech, and so I do a lot of, like, obviously tech reviews, new products, new innovation, and so I think I'm always inspired by new innovations and new products and new designs and different things that are out there. And obviously sustainability is a big topic and everything now. And there's a big movement now in obviously in bioengineering and upcycling things. And I recently got into this whole wormhole of learning about all these amazing things you can do with banana peels, and learning a little bit more about this research team that's actually making bioplastics and plastics that we can actually use for everyday products, basically made out of banana peels. And for me, I get intrigued by topics like that. One, because obviously it's an important thing when we talk about climate change and sustainability and all these different things. But then two, just the ingenuity and the innovation that comes with that, just the thought process, like, wow, I'm going to use this banana. Like, I'm always fascinated when somebody does something so crazy, like to look at a banana peel and be like, I'm going to turn this into plastic. Like, to me, that's just phenomenal, right? That just, when we talk about scientists, I always like to bring creativity, because I always say scientists are the most creative people you possibly imagine, even though somehow we're told that science is a technical field. And
they keep science and art apart, and they shouldn't. They should put science and art together.
Hand in hand, because there's what's more creative than looking at a banana peel and being like, I wonder if I could turn that into plastic. That's such a creative idea to me, and the applications of that are so profound, because now you think about reducing plastic and plastic waste and reducing food waste, and here you are now being able to reduce one of the most epic when it comes to total food waste, banana peels are really high up there in contributing to food waste, because it's like second most popular fruit globally. But now addressing a plastics problem with reducing plastics and with reducing waste now, and being able to bioengineer a product that can do that, to me, that's absolutely fascinating. And I'm excited to see where that is going and kind of the new horizons that's taking, and how companies are going to do a better job at being able to incorporate that into their manufacturing processes and different things like that. So things like that are very fascinating to me, because it's a combination of tech and nature and wildlife and conservation and all the they all come together in just this one ingenious idea. And so that's a recent topic that I was kind of going in a wormhole in, that I was like, that's very intriguing to me.
I was going to say, people need to follow you at Hip Hop Science Show over on Instagram for sure. Simply for those tips, because you did one about the banana peel and for shoe polishing.
Yeah,
and I tried it and it worked. It was amazing. And I also, amazing, right? Because of you, I now chop onions with a little candle nearby, and it totally worked. So every time I cook now, I'm like, I got to light a candle because Maynard told me to do it. So
it's like all these amazing, and it's like I always say, there's science in everything. There's science in absolutely everything. And, like especially for our youth, I think that's important for them to remember, because we go to classrooms and we learn science from our teachers and everything. And then we think that science or learning stops inside the classroom. Right. But science continues in every single element of life. As soon as you leave that classroom, you're continuing to learn more. You're continuing to make hypotheses. You're continuing to experiment. You're continuing to come to conclusions and learn more about the world around you and how things work. And you can find scientific applications in absolutely everything, from banana peels to cutting onions. There's a scientific element to it.
Yeah, those things alone, those are things that teachers could glom onto right there. What can we do with a banana peel? I mean, that's amazing stuff. Yep. So people can follow you on Instagram at Hip Hop Science Show. Where else would you want to send them?
Yeah, you can check out my website, hiphopscienceshow.com. I have pretty much listed all of my projects, and how you can connect with me or collaborate with the different programs that I do as well too. They're on my website. Those are all great places to find me. But I'm on all social platforms: YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, at Hip Hop Science Show. And always reach out to me if you have questions. I love to do programs and work with our youth. And so I'm always ready to engage and ready to support educators and support any topic related to, obviously STEM, but particularly diversity in STEM and uplifting our next generation.
It's also a little frustrating to follow you because you go on these great nature hikes and then you take pictures with your shirt off, and I feel really inadequate. So well done you is what I have to say. So, Maynard, this has been great. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
It's Time for Science is produced, recorded, and edited by David Lippman and Tom Racine, and is sponsored by School Specialty and FOSS, the Full Option Science System, at the Lawrence Hall of Science, UC Berkeley. Be sure to check out FOSS over on Facebook and Twitter.